So here's a scenario that's probably killed at least one of your automations before. You go to a website, you type in the username, the password, you click on submit, and you're expecting to log in, but it actually breaks. There's this timeout, there's this weird error. You go into the log, you figure out that the website's actually asking for a second factor authentication. And your bot has no idea what to do, right? It just sits till it times out and dies. You're frustrated because there's no authentication API, to get that across. So you need a human in the loop. With browserless, it's quite easy to get this set up. We call it hybrid automation because we have humans and we have robots working in the same automation script. So LiveURL is a browserless feature that generates a shareable temporary URL for a running browser session in the cloud. When you open that URL, you get a real-time stream of the browser that your automation script is running in real time, and you can interact with it. There are really only two things you need to know. One is the browserless LiveURL CDP command. This is the CDP command that generates the link. You give it a timeout and it gives you back a shareable URL. The client can open this on their own browser, or you can embed this on your website with an iframe. And two, the browserless live complete. This is basically an event. It fires when the human closes the live URL tab, meaning they're done. Your script listens to it and resumes automatically. That's the entire mental model of how hybrid automation works in browserless. Alright, so let's build this thing. I'm using Puppeteer core and not Puppeteer since we don't really need the browser binaries. That's because the browser is already running on browserless cloud. Next, we're going to get one of our API tokens. Remember that you can sign up for a free account today. We'll just go to our homepage, copy the API key. Now we're going to create some query parameters just to set up the token, the timeout for our browser, which I've set to 5 minutes, and just some basic anti-bot measures like headless false. We're going to create an IIFE to run this easily. I'm going to define a browser that we'll use during our script. Setting up try-catch blocks is always a good practice. We'll get to the catch portion later. So typically when you're using Puppeteer, you'll launch a browser locally. However, when using browserless, you can connect to a browser running in the cloud. So we're going to use the connect method. As you can see, I'm passing on the query parameters that we defined. So we're passing on the API token, the timeout, and the headless false flags. Next, we're going to create a new page, and we're also going to set the viewport to a defined width and height. That way, every time our script runs, it has a concise window that it's working on, since CSS selectors can change depending on the viewport size. Alright, so step 1, we're going to navigate to Proton Mail. I'm going to log a few messages throughout our script. That way, once we run it, we can visualize what's going on step by step. When navigating to a site, it's always good to define a wait until. Since network idle 2 works for my use case, I'm just going to leave it there. And also a timeout of 1 minute so that it doesn't hang indefinitely. Step 2. So I need to input the username into this field. To do that, we can go to this website that we want to log into. Once we're here, we'll have to get this input field. The easiest way is to just right-click and click on Inspect. It'll open the Chrome DevTools. You can see that this element is highlighted. Easiest way to get a selector is to right-click on it, go to Copy, Copy Selector. Go back to our script, we can paste that here. It's a pretty easy selector since it has an ID called username. Step 3, typing out the password. If you follow the same process for the password field, you can find the selector for the password input. In this case, it's also pretty easy. It's just an ID called password. Moving forward, I'm just going to paste the code blocks with the selectors since you've already seen the process to fetch the CSS selectors from your website. Step number 4, we're going to click on the Submit button. This Submit button is this one that says Sign In. It's a longer CSS selector, so I've created a constant that I can use later. As you can see, we're always waiting for the selector before we click on it, just to make sure that it's available on the screen. I've also added a little 15-second timeout to make sure that it doesn't hang. If any of these wait for selectors time out, it probably means that the selector is not found on the window, or you've encountered some bot detection that's not printing this selector. Step 5, we're going to wait for the second factor authentication page to load. How did I find the CSS selector? Well, basically, now I have to start going through the flow in order to see selectors on future pages. As you can see, there's several elements that we can use. In this case, I'm just going to look for the header that says two-factor authentication. If that appears, it means we're on the second factor authentication page. So I'll just copy that selector. I'm going to log that the second factor authentication page was detected. Here comes the fun part, step 6. We're going to generate the live URL for manual second factor authentication input. First, we need to create a CDP session on the page object. The CDP is a protocol that we use to communicate through WebSocket to the context of the browser in the cloud. So we're basically sending it a message saying, I want the browserless live URL back. This is a browserless implemented feature, so it won't work on native Puppeteer. Once I send the CDP command to browserless asking for the live URL, it's going to give me back two objects. The first object is the live URL. This is the URL that will open the browser that's running remotely on the browserless infrastructure. So you can send this to your client in order for them to open this on their end and log in and provide the second factor authentication codes. You can also embed this URL into your website. The second object is the live URL ID. This ID will be useful later so that we can programmatically close the live URL once we've seen a selector indicating that the authentication flow was successful. I'm also setting a 3-minute timeout on the live URL, which means that the users have 3 minutes to complete the second factor authentication flow. Step number 7. We're going to wait for the user to finish the second factor authentication flow via the live URL. We're going to set a promise race. We're going to wait for the live complete. However, we're also waiting for a selector. It's a header that has the title inbox. If any of these events are true, we'll close the promise race and continue our script. The next line would be to close the live URL. Quick note, if the live complete event already fired, probably means that we can't close it again, so we can just write this in a try catch block. And last but not least, let's not forget to close our browser once we're done with it. That way we'll avoid zombie processes hanging and using our resources, and consuming more units too. I said we'd get back to the catch later. I'm just going to do some healthy code maintenance, making sure that we log the error, we'll take a screenshot, and make sure that we do close the browser. Then we can just exit the process. And that's it, we're done. Alright, so let's run this for real. You can see it connecting, navigating, typing the credentials, clicking on submit. Now it's waiting. There we go. We have the live URL in the console, so we can just click on this or open this in our own browser. So I'm fetching the code from my phone. There we go. And it's authenticating. And we're logged in. So there we go. I can close the tab now. Boom, there you go. So the script took a final screenshot showing the Proton Mail being logged in. This is how we show that our hybrid automation is pretty quick to set up, very stable, and you can integrate it seamlessly into your website or flow. If you want to take this even further, check out our docs on session reconnection. You can connect this live URL with session persistence. You just log on once, persist the session, and then keep automating on that website with a logged in state. If this was helpful, please smash the like button and subscribe for more. And feel free to drop a comment if you have questions on this workflow or any other workflow. I'll be happy to answer and maybe even create a new video based on your question. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.